The story begins in light, not the bright, even light of a stage, but the slant of late afternoon across a Tuscan hill, dust lifting from a dirt road, the distant bark of a dog, the smell of oil and linseed and warm plaster in a painter's workshop. Out of that light, in a town called Vinci, a child is born into a world that still believes the heavens govern the earth. Little in the town's stone and timber suggests that someone will spend a life trying to lift the earth's truths into the open air and draw the machinery of the future on the page. He learns to see first. The apprenticeship in Florence is a lesson in looking, how an eyelid shades a cheek, how a shoulder catches the sun, how the curve of a wing is built for flight. A hand learns to mix ground pigments until the color breathes. A mind learns to follow the invisible lines beneath flesh and wood. Ink and chalk become tools not just for making art, but for thinking. In a centuries-old practice, he turns observation into order. Sketches that are not finished paintings, but experiments, hypotheses captured in ink. Pages turn up centuries later, heavy with notes, diagrams, tiny cross-sections of machines, and the spidery backwards script that keeps a private language between brain and paper. This is the first strange thing about him. He is both artisan and scientist, a bridge in a time when the two were not yet separated. His notebooks, the Codex Atlanticus, the Codex Leicester, and a scatter of other journals, are not neat treatises, but the mind in motion. A drawing of a bird's wing sits next to a sketch of gears. Anatomy studies of muscles and tendons lie beside plans for a machine that might climb like a man. The pages smell of iron filings and wet ink. They smell, in a way, like the future. He responds to questions the world has not yet learned to ask. How does a bird stay aloft? What makes water carve a valley? Why does the heart beat as if it is a small furnace inside the chest? From these questions come machines, flying devices that try to copy feather and tendon, a spiraled aerial screw that looks to a modern eye like the ancestor of a helicopter, and a parachute drawn as a pyramid of canvas, simple and sudden in its clarity. There are sketches of a manned armored car, wheels turned by spring mechanism, and a self-propelled cart that folds into itself like a clock with feet. There is a design for a mechanical knight, an automaton of pulleys and levers capable of sitting and moving its arms, the outline of a robot centuries before the word exists. He builds in the mind first. Each line on the page is a test. He draws gears in sections, then draws them again at a different scale. He measures, he dissects, he returns to the same problem with new questions. For flight, he studies feathers and the hum of a small bird. For anatomy, he orders cadavers and works through the rooms of the hospitals, laying aside religious hesitation in pursuit of knowledge. His anatomical plates are full of patient accuracy, muscles rendered as planes and bundles, tendons drawn like chords in a musical score. He traces the valves of the heart, the flow of blood, the chambers that pull and push. He does not have the framework of later medical theory. He does have the method of the observer. When a fact is wrong, he crosses it out and tries again. That iterative patience is the quiet engine behind his work. He is not a prophet pronouncing a future ready-made. He is a cartographer of possibility. The armored vehicle is not a tank as the modern mind would recognize it, but the idea, an enclosed machine designed to protect and move men across a battlefield. His diving suit is made of leather with a mask and tubes for air. And while it would have been awkward and dangerous in practice, the design shows an understanding of pressure, breath, and the human need to adapt to a hostile element. His hydraulics and canal plans for draining and redirecting rivers are less curiosities than blueprints for economies and cities. He studies erosion like a poet of sediment, mapping how water wears stone and lifts the bones of former seas to mountaintops, insisting, from simple evidence of seashells found high above the shore, that the earth is alive with slow motion. There is a moral seriousness to his machines. They are not fantasies spun for their own sake. They are attempts to solve human problems. When he sketches machines of war, he also draws machines for mills and measures for lifting famine-season grain. When he designs methods for canal locks and urban drainage, he thinks of commerce and hygiene. Even his automaton, the mechanical knight, can be read as a study in the limits of movement and the beauty of coordination, a demonstration, not a toy. The designs live in the tension between aesthetic sense and mechanical function. They are elegant and stubbornly practical at the same time. He lives under patronage and patronage's hazards. The Duke in Milan listens because what he hears might be useful. Better bridges, more efficient mills, fortifications. The politics of the time bend his fortunes. Wars arrive as water does, sweeping away commissions and scattering papers. He carries sketchbooks like passports. He moves between patrons and cities, leaving notes and inventions in the hands of those who can pay. Yet many of his sketches never leave the bound pages of his life. Technology, in his era, lacks the industrial infrastructure to realize subtle plans. The materials, the precision machining, the scientific frameworks that would turn insight into machine simply do not exist. So, he draws. And the drawings, patient and precise, wait. The waiting is important. Centuries later, engineers will look to those sketches and nod at the clarity of thought. A spiral that might float in the air becomes, with engines and metal, the work of a 20th century inventor. An automaton, studied and reconstructed, moves in a modern demonstration of circuits and control. The anatomical plates inform artists and doctors alike. The paintings, meanwhile, teach an entire language of seeing, chiaroscuro and sfumato, the blended edges that let a form emerge from atmosphere rather than line. His paintings remain the public face of a private laboratory. In the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper, the science of optics and the psychology of human expression meet and make something impossible to explain by measurement alone. There is a loneliness to this way of living. He writes with a left hand in mirrored scrawl. Perhaps it is a practical protection of ideas, perhaps the simple habit of a left-handed mind. He is celebrated and misunderstood in equal measure. Friends and assistants come and go. In a sketch, he will draw a machine with the delicacy of a botanist and the urgency of a man who knows how finite time can be. When he dies, in 1519 in a French court far from the hills of Vinci, much of his work is scattered, sold, or ignored. The immediate world does not quite know what to do with a man who measured the airflows under a wing and the turbulence in a river with the same concentrated hand. That dispersion turns out to be an odd blessing. The notebooks survive in pockets and cabinets, bought by collectors and binding together into the voice that reaches us now. In the centuries that follow, the technologies he sketched find materials and engines that can make them real. But the real inheritance is less the machines than the method. The essential thing he modeled is not a single gadget, but the habit of seeing the world as a system and of translating observation into design. He treats sketches as experiments and drawings as a form of calculation. He refuses to accept authority when a fact can be tested. His tools are curiosity, patience, and a rigorous refusal to choose beauty over accuracy. To stand now in a museum and watch those pages is to feel a link in a long chain. The centuries are not an abyss, but a corridor. Sometimes the corridor is filled with the clatter of industry, sometimes with fear or indifference. But the corridor exists because someone once decided to map possibility on paper and to insist that the map mattered. Many of the machines he conceived were impossible in their age. Some were rudimentary, others were elegant anticipations. All of them share the same bright desire, to know how things work, and in knowing, to make the human condition a little more bearable. So what are we to take from a man who sketched helicopters and robots before there were motors or microprocessors? The easy answer is novelty. Genius spotted centuries ahead. The deeper answer is a portrait of how the future is made. It is hammered out in small acts of attention: the drawing of a wing, the dissection of a body, the repeated attempt to get something to move the way you imagine. In that accumulation of small experiments, an underlying belief grows that the world is legible, that nature obeys patterns that can be understood, and that imagination, when disciplined by observation, becomes the truest form of invention. The notebooks themselves teach a quiet lesson about humility. Lines are erased, notes are marginal, ideas appear with caveats. He writes not in declarations, but in questions. The future he sketches is not an image of inevitability, but a set of invitations. Try this, test that, measure here, refine there. The machines are not the end, they are the method made visible. Centuries of engineers and artists have taken up that method and transformed it into laboratories and factories, into disciplines and collaborations he could not have named. But when they do, the first tremor of the idea, the first careful, patient line, can often be traced to a page in an old codex. Finally, there is something like comfort in his example. In a world where much seems instantaneous, where technology appears to leap fully formed, Leonardo's work reminds us that invention is patient work. It takes seeing, failing, adjusting, and the courage to sketch what does not yet fit in the world you inhabit. His legacy is not a list of future devices, but a practice. To look deeply, to design with empathy for both the human body and the natural world, and to keep ink on paper as proof that the imagination was active, even when the world could not yet build what it imagined. And if the future is a kind of promise, then perhaps the truest invention is simply the decision to look long enough to make that promise possible.